Settle in. Let the noise of your world fade away and allow the quiet to deepen around you. We are going to listen, not with our ears, but with our imagination. We are listening past the centuries, past the din of progress, to the soft, wet sounds of a world lit only by fire and faith. You can feel the air begin to change, growing heavy and cool, thick with the scent of damp earth and wood smoke. There is a distant, rhythmic clang of a blacksmith's hammer, a lonely sound that marks the slow pulse of a day just beginning. The light is thin, a pale gray wash that seeps through a small, grimy window, revealing the rough-hewn wooden walls of the room where you find yourself. It is not quite morning, but the long, oppressive night is finally starting to release its grip on this forgotten corner of the world. The first true sound you register is the tolling of a church bell, a deep, resonant peal that rolls through the fog-shrouded city like a command from God himself. It's a sound of order, of piety, a reminder that every moment is being watched and judged. But here, on the street level, other sounds begin to answer. The groan of a heavy wooden cart being dragged through thick mud, the sharp, irritated squawk of a chicken, and the low murmur of voices from the floors below. You can smell the morning's offerings, the sharp, acrid tang of stale beer and unwashed bodies, mingling with the slightly more hopeful aroma of coarse bread being baked in a communal oven down the lane. This is the city's daily perfume, a complex blend of survival and decay, a scent that clings to your clothes and works its way deep into your memory. As the sun climbs, its weak light does little to burn away the persistent river fog, instead turning the air into a shimmering, hazy soup. You are walking now, your boots sinking slightly into the muck that passes for a street. It's a treacherous landscape of mud, straw, and discarded things you'd rather not identify, a sort of medieval obstacle course where a single misstep could cost you your dignity and the cleanliness of your only tunic. People press past you, their faces pale and drawn in the morning chill. They are wrapped in rough wool, their breath pluming in the air. There is no friendly chatter, no morning pleasantries. This is the medieval version of a morning commute, a silent, determined march toward whatever labor or trade will keep starvation at bay for one more day. You find yourself drawn toward the city square, the chaotic heart of this sprawling organism. Here, the sensory assault intensifies. The air is a cacophony of smells, the sweet, cloying scent of rotting fruit, the sharp, metallic tang of a butcher's stall, the earthy aroma of root vegetables piled high on a burlap sheet, and the ever-present, eye-watering ammonia from the livestock pens. Vendors shout their prices, their voices raw and desperate, competing with the bleating of sheep and the squealing of a pig being unceremoniously weighed. This is the local news network and the supermarket, all rolled into one, a place of commerce and gossip, where a stolen glance or a whispered rumor travels faster than any official decree. If you enjoy this journey into the past, feel free to leave a like, but only if you truly mean it. By midday, the sun has finally asserted its authority, and a weak warmth spreads over the city. You can feel it on your face as you stand in the shadow of the great cathedral, a monstrous monument of stone and faith that dwarfs everything around it. Its spires claw at the sky, a testament to man's ambition and God's glory. Yet at its base, life is anything but glorious. Beggars with missing limbs and vacant eyes hold out wooden bowls, their pleas lost in the general hum of the city. A stray dog, its ribs clearly visible, sniffs hopefully at a discarded bone. The contrast is almost comical, the soaring, beautiful stone promising an eternity of salvation, while just feet away, mortals endure a very real, very dirty, and very short-lived damnation. You step inside a tavern to escape the growing heat of the afternoon. The change is immediate and profound. The world outside is muted, replaced by the dim, smoky interior. The air is thick, almost chewable, heavy with the smell of spilled ale, sweat, and the greasy smoke from a pig turning slowly on a spit over the hearth. Light struggles to pierce the gloom, coming only from the fire and a few tallow candles that sputter and weep greasy tears onto the rough wooden tables. You can feel the texture of the splintered bench beneath your fingers. The noise here is a low, continuous rumble of conversation, punctuated by the occasional coarse laugh or the clatter of a wooden mug on a tabletop. It's a sanctuary of sorts, a place to forget the mud and the toil for a few precious amber-lit moments. As dusk begins to settle, a soft rain begins to fall, turning the dusty streets back into a slick, glistening morass. The sound is gentle at first, a soft patter on the thatched roofs, a rhythmic drumming that seems to wash the city in a melancholy gray. From your vantage point, you watch as people hurry through the twilight, their shoulders hunched against the damp. The fires in the hearths of homes seem to burn brighter now, casting warm, flickering squares of orange light into the deepening gloom. The rain cleanses nothing. It simply rearranges the filth, turning the air cooler and adding the smell of wet wool and damp earth to the city's already potent aromatic profile. This is the kind of evening that encourages introspection, or perhaps just a deep, dreamless sleep. Feel free to comment with the hour you finally drifted off. Night falls not as a gentle blanket, but as a heavy, suffocating cloak. The city transforms. The familiar streets become alien territory, filled with deep shadows where anything could be hiding. The only light comes from the occasional torch sputtering on a wall or a lantern carried by a member of the city watch, its beam cutting a nervous, shifting path through the oppressive dark. Now, different sounds emerge. The distant howl of a dog, the creak of a shutter in the wind, and from certain alleyways, a sound that is both jovial and deeply artificial. It is the sound of forced laughter, of music played just a little too loud, spilling from the doorways of buildings where flesh is the only currency that matters. You find yourself drawn toward one such establishment, a tall, timber-framed house leaning precariously against its neighbor. From its open windows, you can hear the shrill laughter of women and the deeper, slurred voices of men. It smells of cheap perfume, wine, and desperation. But tonight, your attention is not on the raucous performance unfolding in the main hall. Instead, you are listening for something else, a sound that is being deliberately muffled by the revelry. You let your senses drift past the creaking of bed frames and the hollow merriment, climbing the narrow, winding stairs in your mind, moving toward the back rooms, the forgotten spaces tucked away from the prying eyes of patrons and the ever-watchful church. For in one of these rooms, a different kind of labor is underway. It is a primal, painful, and terrifyingly silent struggle. Here, away from the noise and the sin being sold downstairs, a life is attempting to begin in the most precarious of circumstances. The air is thick, with the metallic scent of blood and the sharp, herbal aroma of folk remedies. You can almost hear the gritted teeth, the stifled groans, the whispered prayers to saints who would surely turn their backs on such a place. This is the unspoken reality we are here to explore. The brutal, whispered-about secret of giving birth in a house built for sin, where the first cry of a newborn is not a miracle, but a dangerous, damning taboo. But before we can truly understand the silence in that room, we must first listen to the noise that created it. We must understand the relentless, grinding rhythm of the world outside, the world that these women and their patrons are desperate to escape, even for a single night. Let us drift away from the brothel's false warmth and listen instead to the true pulse of the city, the sound of work. We sink down, through the floorboards, through the very earth, into the suffocating blackness of a coal mine. Here, there is no day or night, only the eternal, damp chill of the deep earth. The air tastes of stone dust and sweat, so thick it feels less like breathing and more like drinking the darkness. The only light is the pathetic, flickering flame of a tallow lamp fixed to your cap, its greasy light casting monstrous, dancing shadows that make the narrow tunnel feel alive and predatory. The only clock is the rhythm of your own labor. The sound is a dull, repetitive chink, chink, chink as your pickaxe bites into the coal seam. Your world is reduced to this single, jarring impact, a shock that travels up the wooden handle, through your arms, and settles as a deep, permanent ache in your shoulders and back. You can feel the grit of the coal dust between your teeth, a fine black powder that lines your throat and guarantees you will be coughing up the darkness for the rest of your short, miserable life. There is a constant, low-level fear here, a subliminal hum of anxiety. You listen for the groan of the timber supports, the whisper of shifting rock, the telltale signs that the tons of earth above you have finally decided to reclaim this space, with you still inside it. This is not a job, it is a slow-motion burial. Your break is a moment of stillness in the oppressive dark. You sit on a damp rock, the silence now more terrifying than the noise of the pickaxe. You gnaw on a piece of bread so hard it could be mistaken for a rock itself, its flavor, a bland mix of stale flour and the coal dust on your hands. You see a boy, no older than 8, crawling out of a seam too narrow for a grown man, his face an old man's mask of black dust, his eyes wide and vacant. He doesn't speak. He just coughs, a dry, rattling sound that seems to shake his entire tiny frame. He is a ghost in training. Then, the moment is over. You pick up the tool that is both your livelihood and your executioner. The pickaxe feels heavier now. The chink, chink, chink begins again, the only song this subterranean world knows. Let us rise now, out of the earth's suffocating embrace, and into a different kind of prison. We float into a long, low-ceilinged room, where the air itself is a choking fog of white lint. This is the spinner's hall, a place where dozens of women and girls perform the same mind-numbing task from sunrise to sunset. The sound here is overwhelming. A deafening, hypnotic clatter of wooden shuttles and creaking looms, a mechanical roar that forbids conversation and erases thought. You can feel the vibrations through the floorboards, a constant tremor that works its way into your bones. The smell is of raw wool, human sweat, and the faint, sickly sweet scent of lung disease, the inevitable price for breathing this fibrous air day after day. It is the sound and smell of fabric being born from the slow destruction of human bodies. Your eyes sting from the effort of focusing on the countless threads in the dim light filtering through a high, grimy window. You watch a woman named Ilara, her back bent into a permanent curve from a lifetime spent leaning over this very machine. Her fingers, gnarled and stained, move with the speed born of endless repetition, guiding the shuttle back and forth, back and forth. A thread snaps. Her movements don't even falter. With a sigh that is silent beneath the din, she painstakingly rethreads the line, her eyes squinting, her lips a thin, bloodless line of concentration. This tiny crisis, a catastrophe in her world of textile production, is resolved in moments. There is no time for error. The shuttle must fly, the cloth must grow, inch by painstaking inch. Her life is not measured in years, but in yards of finished wool. Her lunch is a thin, watery gruel in a wooden bowl, consumed in the precious few minutes she is allowed to step away from the loom. She eats standing up, her body still swaying slightly, as if to the rhythm of the machine that owns her. She looks out the dirty window at a sliver of gray sky, her face as blank and expressionless as the wall. There is no joy in this pause, only a brief cessation of labor. Then a bell rings, a sharp, angry clang, and she returns to her station. Her feet find the pedals, her hands find the shuttle. The dance begins again. The shuttle flies left, the shuttle flies right. Her mind is a silent, empty space, hollowed out by the relentless, thundering noise of progress, one thread at a time. Now let us follow the scent of baking bread, a smell that promises warmth and sustenance, but is born of its own unique hell. We find ourselves in the pre-dawn inferno of a city bakery. The heat is a physical blow, a solid wall of fire and steam that sucks the air from your lungs. It radiates from a massive brick oven, its mouth a gaping, fiery maw that seems to hunger for more than just dough. The air is thick with the sweet, yeasty smell of rising bread, but it is cut with the acrid tang of sweat and the sharp scent of scorching flour. Your skin prickles, and your eyes water from the smoke that the chimney cannot quite consume. This is the engine room of the city's morning ritual, fueled by sleepless nights and aching muscles. You are a baker's apprentice, and your primary battle is with the dough. It is a living, breathing monster on a massive flour-dusted table. You push, fold, and punch, your entire body weight thrown into the task of subduing the sticky, elastic mass. The sound is a wet, rhythmic thump, slap, thump, the sound of your fists and palms working the gluten into submission. Your shoulders burn, your back screams, and your hands are caked in a permanent glove of dried dough. You watch the master baker, a man whose forearms are a roadmap of old burns and scars, as he slides loaves into the oven's fiery throat with a long wooden peel. His face is perpetually flushed, his expression grim, as if he is locked in a timeless battle with the beast in the wall. Your meal is not a beautiful, crusty loaf, but the charred heel of one that was left in the oven too long. It is hard and bitter, but it is food. You eat it quickly, washing it down with a mug of thin, sour ale that does little to quench the thirst brought on by the furnace-like heat. There is no sitting, no real rest. You must feed the fire, mix another batch, shape another 100 rolls. The city is waking up, and it is hungry. The demand is as relentless as the fire. So you turn back to the table, to the waiting mountain of dough. You push, you fold, you punch. The rhythm takes over, a brutal meditation that empties your mind of everything but the ache and the heat. Let us leave the fire behind and seek the cold, wet embrace of the river. It is still dark, the water a sheet of black glass reflecting a starless sky. A thick, chilling fog clings to the surface, muffling all sound and making the world feel small and intimate. You are on a small, leaky fishing boat, and the cold is a living thing. It seeps through your damp wool tunic, through your skin, and settles deep within your bones, a permanent chill that no hearth fire will ever truly banish. The smell is overwhelming and ancient, the slick, metallic scent of fish, the rich decay of the river mud, and the underlying stench of the city's waste, which all finds its way here eventually. This is the city's lifeblood in its sewer, and you are here to harvest its meager offerings. Your hands are raw and numb, the coarse ropes of the net having rubbed them bloody hours ago. You no longer feel the pain, only a dull, clumsy stiffness as you and your father haul the heavy, dripping net from the murky depths. The sound is one of wet, heavy struggle, the groan of the wood as you brace yourselves, the sloshing of the water, and the final, disappointing slap of the net as it lands on the deck. You peer at the catch in the gloom, a few small, bony fish writhing amongst clumps of riverweed and a discarded shoe. It is a pathetic haul for a night's work. Your father says nothing, his silence more damning than any curse. He simply begins to untangle the mess, his movements slow and methodical. Your breakfast is a piece of yesterday's fish, dried and salted, its flesh tough and chewy. You eat it with your head down, the salty flavor doing little to mask the taste of failure. The fog begins to thin, revealing the grim, gray silhouette of the city waking up on the banks. There is no beauty in this sunrise, only the promise of another day of the same back-breaking, heart-breaking work. Your father gestures with his head, and you pick up your end of the net. You cast it out into the polluted water, the ropes uncoiling with a soft hiss. You will pull it in again, and again, and again. You are not a fisherman. You are a gambler in a game where the house always wins, hoping for the one lucky catch that will keep you from starving tomorrow. Look up, now, to the rooftops, a jagged man-made mountain range against the pale sky, and listen. You can hear the faint, desperate scraping from within one of the city's thousands of chimneys. Let us shrink down, becoming small enough to follow that sound. You are inside a vertical tunnel of brick and soot, a space so narrow that your shoulders and knees scrape against the walls with every upward movement. It is utterly black, a darkness more complete than the deepest mine. The air is a thick, unbreathable poison of creosote and ash. With every panicked gasp, you inhale the history of 100 winter fires, the dust coating your tongue and lining your lungs with a thick, black paste. This is not a passage. It is a grave stood on its end. You are a boy. You have to be. No man could fit in this suffocating space. Your job is to climb, to scrape away the flammable soot with a stiff brush and your bare, bleeding fingers. The sound is the harsh scratch of your tools against the brick, the frantic scrabbling of your own limbs, and the ragged, wheezing sound of your own breathing. You can feel the rough, sharp edges of the bricks tearing at your clothes and skin. A fear, cold and sharp, lives in your belly, the fear of getting stuck, of being wedged in this black throat, unable to move up or down, left to slowly suffocate in the dark. It has happened before. The master calls it a cost of doing business. When you finally, blessedly, break through the top, the sudden rush of open air and light is a dizzying shock. For one glorious moment, you are the highest person in the city, looking down on the world of mud and toil. You take a single, deep, clean breath, a luxury so profound it feels like a sin. You see the birds, free and effortless. But the moment is fleeting. The master's voice barks from the street below, and you know you must descend again, back into the suffocating blackness. Your reward for this journey to hell and back will be a bowl of thin gruel that tastes of soot and a pile of straw in a cold cellar to sleep on until the next chimney beckons. And finally we return to the street, to the thick, viscous mud that is the city's foundation. Here the world moves at the pace of an exhausted, overburdened ox. You are a carter, and your job is to navigate this urban swamp, hauling the city's lifeblood, ale, grain, stone, wood, on a massive two-wheeled cart that seems to have a mind of its own. The sound is a symphony of struggle, the low, mournful groan of the wooden axle, the strained, heavy breathing of the ox, the wet, sucking sound of the wheels fighting the mud, and your own voice, a hoarse, repetitive cry of hup, hup, hup. It is the soundtrack of immense effort yielding frustratingly slow progress. You walk beside the cart, not riding, for that is a luxury you cannot afford. Every step is a battle against the muck, which clings to your boots and tries to pull you down. You can feel the constant, jarring vibration of the overloaded cart through the soles of your feet. The smell is of wet animal, damp wood, and the ever-present complex aroma of the street itself, a blend of manure, rotting garbage, and human waste. You are not just moving cargo, you are wading through the physical embodiment of the city's filth. Your destination, a warehouse on the other side of the market, seems as distant and unreachable as the moon. Your break comes when a wheel sinks into a pothole so deep it nearly swallows the axle. The ox strains, its muscles quivering, but it is no use. You are stuck. You lean against the unmoving cart, your body screaming with fatigue, and watch as the river of humanity simply flows around you, their faces apathetic. This is your struggle, and yours alone. You pull a raw turnip from your sack and chew on its bitter, earthy flesh. It is a poor meal, but it is something. After a long rest, you put your shoulder to the wheel and roar at the ox. With a great, shuddering lurch, the cart breaks free. You have won. Your prize is the right to continue your miserable, mud-soaked journey, one agonizing revolution of the wheel at a time. This is the world that grinds spirits into dust, the world that makes the false promises of a brothel seem like a rational, even hopeful, choice. This constant, grinding labor is a promise of survival, but it is a promise with 1,000 hidden clauses and exceptions. The contract you sign with your daily toil is written in invisible ink, and the fine print is a litany of sudden, brutal endings. For every man who dies of old age, a rare and celebrated achievement, like winning the lottery, dozens more are simply erased. They are deleted from the world by a moment of inattention, a faulty piece of rope, or the simple, uncaring physics of gravity. Danger is not an event here. It is the air you breathe, the ground you walk on, the very substance of your world. It is the silent partner in every transaction, the unseen guest at every meager meal, waiting patiently for its turn to be noticed. You can see it now, high above the city square, on the skeletal framework of a new wing for the cathedral. Men, looking like spiders on a vast, chaotic web, crawl across a lattice of raw, green timber scaffolding. There are no safety nets, no harnesses, only a misplaced sense of confidence and a desperate need for the day's wage. You watch a man named Thomas, his muscles straining as he helps winch a massive block of limestone upward. The rope, damp from the morning's rain, creaks and groans, its fibers screaming in protest. And then, with a sound like a giant's firecracker, it snaps. For a heartbeat, there is a perfect, unnatural silence. The stone hangs in the air, defying the world, before plummeting downward. It does not hit Thomas. It hits the plank he is standing on, which shatters into a spray of deadly splinters. He falls, not with a scream, but with a quiet, surprised gasp. A puppet whose strings have all been cut at once. He tumbles through the air, a bundle of rags and bone, and meets the unforgiving ground with a sickening wet thud that is barely audible over the city's din. A foreman shouts, a few workers cross themselves, and then they begin the tedious process of lowering the next stone. After all, God's house will not build itself, and the life of one man is a small price to pay for a new gargoyle. Let us follow the scent of decay down a narrow alley to the tanner's yard, a place so foul it feels like an open wound on the city's skin. Here, the danger is not a sudden, dramatic fall, but a slow, creeping invasion. You are submerged up to your waist in a stone vat filled with a putrid, stinking soup of water, lime, and dog excrement, used to soften the animal hides. The ammonia is so strong it scours your lungs and makes your eyes stream with constant, burning tears. You spend 12 hours a day in this chemical bath, your hands and feet perpetually swollen and cracked, the skin peeling away in soft white strips. You are pickling yourself alive to make the leather that a nobleman will use for his fine, soft gloves. The master tanner, a man whose nose has long since surrendered to the onslaught, occasionally adds a dash of arsenic to the mix, a secret ingredient to hurry the process along. He does not tell you this, of course. You only notice it later when your hair starts to fall out in clumps and the endless shaking in your hands begins. You are not just working here. You are being unmade, molecule by molecule, for the sake of fashion. And if you survive the day, if you are not crushed or broken or slowly poisoned by your trade, the dangers simply follow you home and sit down at your table. You buy a loaf of bread, its weight reassuring in your hand, only to find its heft comes not from honest flour, but from a clever mixture of sawdust, chalk, and powdered beans. It fills your belly, yes, but it scours your insides, a slow, gritty erosion of your health. The milk for your child is a thin, bluish liquid made to look rich and creamy with the addition of chalk dust, or, if the seller is particularly brazen, a slurry of sheep's brains. The beer you drink to numb the ache in your back and the fear in your heart is a weak, watery brew, given a false, bitter kick with soot from the chimney or herbs known to induce a mild, dizzying sickness. You learn to chew slowly, to inspect every mouthful, to treat every meal as a potential assassination attempt. The butcher's stall is a masterclass in culinary deception. That string of plump, inviting sausages you buy for a penny? It is a mystery wrapped in an intestine. It is the final resting place for the parts of the pig no one would dare buy if they saw them whole. The lungs, the spleen, the odd bits of gristle and skin, all ground together with a heavy dose of pepper and fennel to mask the faint, sweet tang of meat that is just beginning to turn. Sometimes, if an animal died of disease, the butcher will carefully cut away the most obvious sores and tumors, rub the flesh with salt and vinegar to kill the smell, and sell it as a specialty cut to an unsuspecting customer. You take a bite of your evening meal, a savory stew your wife has labored over, and you find yourself wondering, is this beef? Is it pork? Or is it the final sad chapter in the life of a horse that collapsed in the street this morning? You learn to stop asking what is in the stew and simply be grateful that it is hot. Inevitably, this life of physical assault and chemical warfare takes its toll. Your body, a machine pushed far beyond its limits, begins to break down. The miner's cough becomes a constant, rattling presence. The spinner's joints swell into painful, immovable knots. The baker's skin erupts in angry, weeping boils from the constant heat. And so you seek a cure. You visit the apothecary, a dark, dusty shop that smells of dried herbs, and something vaguely like a tomb. The man behind the counter, whose own health looks questionable at best, listens to your troubles with a knowing nod. For your cough, he sells you a thick, black syrup of licorice and horehound, which also contains a healthy dose of lead filings for potency. For your aching joints, he prescribes a poultice made from goose dung and nettles to be applied piping hot. For a fever, he might bleed you, opening a vein in your arm and draining a pint of your excess blood into a bowl, leaving you paler and weaker but supposedly more balanced. You pay him with your precious, hard-earned coin and leave with a bag of questionable remedies, where the line between a cure and a different, more expensive way to die is decided mostly by blind luck. The most potent cures, of course, are not found in a shop, but whispered in the dark, They are rooted in a logic that is both ancient and utterly insane. If your child is wasting away, you are told to pass the naked infant through the split trunk of a young ash tree at sunrise. To ward off the plague, you might carry a pomander, a ball of fragrant spices, or, if you're truly desperate, a live toad in a silk bag worn around your neck, the theory being that the noble creature will draw the poison out of the air and into its own body. A persistent headache can be cured by binding a rope, previously used to hang a criminal, around your forehead. Each of these solutions comes with a story, a friend of a friend who swore it worked. And in a world with no other answers, where official medicine is a terrifying mix of guesswork and butchery, you are willing to try anything. You will humiliate yourself, you will spend your last coin, you will place your faith in a dead man's rope, all for a sliver of hope. Let us return for a moment to the blacksmith's forge, the fiery heart of the neighborhood. The heat is a physical presence, so intense it makes the air shimmer. You watch the smith, a mountain of a man with arms like oak branches, his face a mask of sweat and soot. He is not just working with iron, he is bullying it into submission. His hammer blows a deafening, rhythmic punctuation to the day. He pulls a glowing orange bar from the coals and places it on the anvil. A stray spark, a tiny incandescent star, flies from under the hammer. It is a common occurrence, happening 1,000 times a day. But this one spark lands not on the stone floor, but in a pile of oily rags tucked into a corner. For a moment, nothing happens. Then, a wisp of greasy black smoke appears, followed by a shy, tentative flicker of orange flame. The blacksmith, his entire focus on the metal in front of him, notices nothing. The fire, no longer shy, consumes the rags and leaps hungrily to a nearby pile of wooden tool handles. The roar of the forge is suddenly joined by a new sound, the hungry, crackling roar of a fire that is no longer under anyone's control. It is just another workday, until suddenly it is the last workday. This, then, is the world outside the brothel's walls. It is a relentless, chaotic, and fundamentally absurd obstacle course of survival. It is a place where your job is actively trying to kill you, your food is a calculated deception, and your medicine is a superstitious gamble. Every sunrise brings with it a fresh set of probabilities for disaster. It is a life lived on the knife's edge of pure chance. And when the world is this insane, when every moment is a roll of the dice, the carefully managed, predictable sin of a brothel begins to look less like damnation and more like a sanctuary. It is a place where, for the price of a few coins, the rules are at least clear, and the dangers, while real, are at least familiar. And so, in a world where your labor is a slow-acting poison and your dinner is a game of chance, your own body inevitably becomes the final, most intimate battleground. Sickness is not a visitor here. It is a resident. It lives in the water, it travels on the breath of a neighbor, it sleeps in the grain, and it waits patiently in your own blood for a moment of weakness. It has 1,000 names and 1,000 faces, but its purpose is always the same: to remind you that the elaborate, noisy machine of the city is built upon a foundation of fragile, easily broken, and ultimately disposable human flesh. The greatest danger is not the falling stone or the snapping rope, but the invisible traitor that is already inside the gates. Listen, now, to the sound beneath the city's roar. It is a quiet, persistent, almost delicate sound. It is the sound of a cough, not a strong, healthy cough that clears the throat, but a soft, wet, tired little noise. A polite apology from a body that is slowly, gracefully liquefying from the inside out. This is the sound of consumption, the wasting sickness. It is the artist of diseases, a master of slow-burn tragedy. It does not strike like lightning. It insinuates itself into your life like a melancholy poem. It paints pale, translucent skin, adds a touch of feverish color to the cheeks, and makes the eyes seem larger, brighter, more profound. For a time, you might even be considered beautiful, a tragic, ethereal creature too delicate for this coarse world. But then the coughing deepens, and the beautiful, poetic sputum you produce is no longer clear, but flecked with the bright, shocking crimson of your own dissolving lungs. The slow, elegant dance of consumption is a private affair, played out in stuffy, airless rooms. But there are other, more theatrical diseases that prefer a larger stage. Consider the grand spectacle of the smallpox. It begins as a simple fever, a common misery of aches and chills that you might try to sweat out under a pile of filthy blankets. But then, after a few days of this mundane suffering, the performance truly begins. Your skin begins to prickle and itch, and then erupts. You become a canvas for 1,000 tiny, angry red spots, which soon swell into hard, pearl-like blisters. The blisters fill with a thick yellow pus, and you are transformed into a grotesque parody of yourself, a lumpy, weeping landscape of infection. The smell is unforgettable, a sweet, sickly stench of decay that clings to the very walls of the room, announcing to the world that a great and terrible work is being accomplished upon your flesh. Or perhaps you will be chosen for a different role, that of the typhus patient. This is the fever of the crowd, the sickness of filth, born in the straw of prisons and the bedding of the poor, carried from person to person by the humble, unnoticed louse. It does not transform your skin into a horror show. It simply turns off the lights inside your mind. A deep, unshakable lethargy settles over you, a stupor so profound that the world becomes a distant, muffled dream. You lie still, your eyes half open, but seeing nothing, muttering a constant stream of nonsense to figures only you can see. A strange, faint rash of purple spots might bloom across your chest, like the faint bruises left by a ghost. You do not die a dramatic death, you simply fade out, your consciousness dimming like a candle flame in a draught until it is gone completely. And if the diseases of the air and the louse do not claim you, the disease of your daily bread is always waiting. The baker's cheap, adulterated rye sometimes carries a hidden passenger, a dark purple fungus called ergot. When you eat this tainted bread, you invite a demon into your body. It is called St. Anthony's fire, and it begins with a tingling in your fingers and toes, which soon blossoms into a sensation of being roasted alive over an invisible fire. There is no relief, only a constant, maddening agony. Then comes the second act. The burning recedes, replaced by a dead, creeping cold. Your limbs begin to wither and turn black, becoming dry and brittle like charred wood. Eventually, your fingers, your toes, your hands, your feet will simply fall off, without pain or blood, leaving you a living ruin. And all the while, the demon in the bread plays tricks on your mind, filling your vision with terrifying, writhing beasts and whispering blasphemies in your ear. When the body begins its rebellion, when the cough becomes too deep or the fever too high, you do not stay home. Home is for dying. For a chance, however slim, at something else, you must go to the hospital. Let us walk there now. The very name, Hotel Dieu, the Hotel of God, sounds promising, like a place of peace and divine mercy. But as you approach the massive stone building, the first thing you notice is the smell. It is a complex, layered aroma, a miasma of unwashed bodies, stale urine, vomit, blood, and the cloying, sweet scent of decay, all mingling with the faint, hopeful smell of incense from the chapel. It is the smell of mass-produced suffering, and it pours from the open doors and unglazed windows like a visible fog. You step inside, and the world changes. You are in a vast, cavernous hall, its high, vaulted ceiling lost in shadow. The only light filters down from tall, narrow windows, illuminating a scene of organized misery that would make a devil weep. Long rows of wide wooden beds line the walls, each one a stage for its own private tragedy. And you notice something that seems at first like a simple matter of economy, but is in fact a core principle of the institution. There is more than one person in every bed. 2, 3, sometimes 4 souls are packed in together, head to foot, their fevers mingling, their coughs echoing one another, their various sicknesses holding a quiet, intimate conversation in the shared, soiled straw of the mattress. A bell tolls and the day officially begins. Black-robed nuns move silently through the rows, their faces impassive masks of practiced piety. They are not here to cure, but to facilitate a good death. Their movements are efficient, born of endless repetition. They straighten a blanket, offer a sip of water from a wooden ladle, and whisper a prayer into the ear of a man whose breathing has become a shallow, rattling gasp. They do not distinguish between the man with a broken leg and the woman in the final stages of the pox. All are simply souls in transition, and their job is to ensure that transition points in the correct upward direction. There is no gentleness here, only a grim spiritual efficiency. The morning meal arrives on a large wooden cart, pushed by two sullen-looking monks. It is a thin gray gruel, served in rough wooden bowls. For many, it is the first and last meal of the day. The sound of spoons scraping against wood is a weak, pathetic chorus in the vast, echoing hall. Some patients are too weak to feed themselves, and a nun will spoon the tasteless paste into their mouths with a detached air, as if feeding a large, sickly infant. There is no conversation, only the sounds of eating, coughing, and the low, continuous murmur of prayer from the chapel at the far end of the hall. This is not sustenance. It is merely a ritual to mark the passing of another morning. Now, a new figure enters the hall, and a ripple of something, not quite hope, but perhaps curiosity, passes through the beds. This is the physician. He is not a man of the hospital, but a visiting dignitary, a scholar of medicine. He is dressed in fine robes, and he holds a pomander to his nose, a small, perforated ball of silver filled with fragrant spices, to protect himself from the foul and dangerous air of his own patients. He does not touch the sick. To do so would be to lower himself to the level of a common surgeon or a nurse. His work is entirely intellectual, a battle of wits with the unseen forces of disease. His first and most important diagnostic tool is a small glass flask. A nun presents it to him, filled with the morning urine of a feverish patient. The physician holds the flask up to the weak light from the window, swirling the contents gently. He is a wine connoisseur of human waste. He observes its color. Is it the healthy straw yellow, or the dangerous cloudy brown of melancholy? He notes its consistency, looking for sediment, which he calls the materia peccans, the sinful matter being expelled by the body. He might even give it a tentative sniff. After a long, dramatic pause, he delivers his verdict. An excess of yellow bile. The choleric humor is dangerously ascendant. His entire practice is based on this elegant, beautifully simple, and utterly wrong idea of the four humors. Your body, he believes, is a container for four liquids: blood, phlegm, yellow bile, and black bile. Health is the perfect balance of these four fluids. Sickness is simply an imbalance. Too much blood makes you sanguine and prone to fevers. Too much phlegm makes you sluggish and dull. Too much yellow bile makes you angry and irritable. And too much black bile plunges you into the depths of melancholy. The cure, therefore, is not to fight a specific disease, but to restore this delicate internal equilibrium. He moves to the bed of a young man in the final stages of consumption. The boy's breathing is a faint, wet whisper. The physician does not use a listening tube. That invention is centuries away. Instead, he leans forward, placing his ear directly against the boy's thin, sweat-soaked tunic, and listens for a moment. He straightens up, stroking his beard thoughtfully. The phlegmatic humor is overwhelming the vital spirits. He announces to his unimpressed audience of nuns. He prescribes a posset of hot wine and herbs, designed to warm the patient and counteract the cold nature of the phlegm. He does not seem to notice that the boy has stopped breathing. His attention is then drawn to a woman whose face is a swollen, unrecognizable mask of smallpox pustules. He keeps a safe distance, holding the pomander so tightly to his nose that his knuckles are white. He knows this disease is different, that it travels through the air itself. He orders the nuns to hang thick red cloths around her bed. The color red, it is believed, has a sympathetic magic. It will draw the redness of the disease out of the patient's body and into the fabric. The woman, delirious and blind, moans softly behind her crimson curtain, unaware of the colorful, useless magic being worked on her behalf. Next, he approaches a man lying in the deep, death-like stupor of typhus. The man's eyes are open, but they see nothing of this world. The physician lifts one of the man's eyelids with a delicate finger, peers at the bloodshot eye, and nods sagely. A surfeit of black bile clouding the mind, he declares. The treatment is obvious. The foul humor must be expelled. He prescribes a powerful purgative, a brutal concoction of senna and other harsh herbs that will ravage the patient's already weakened bowels. The goal is to create a violent, cleansing storm within the body, a controlled demolition to restore order. Whether the patient can survive such a cleansing is a secondary concern. And for the patient with a simple fever, the man whose blood humor is deemed too abundant, the prescription is always the same: bleeding. The physician gives a curt nod to another figure who has been waiting silently in the shadows. This is the barber surgeon. He is not a scholar, but a tradesman, a man of razors and blades. He approaches the bed with a small, sharp lancet and a brass bowl. He ties a leather strap around the patient's upper arm, and the veins bulge, dark and blue. With a quick, practiced flick of the wrist, he opens a vein. The blood, dark and thick, spurts into the bowl. The barber surgeon watches the flow with a critical eye. He will drain a pint, perhaps two, until the patient grows pale and faint, his feverish energy depleted. The imbalance has been corrected. The patient is now weaker, more anemic, but in the physician's view, he is one step closer to health. Midday arrives, and the great hall grows warmer. The thin shafts of sunlight that pierce the gloom are now thick with dancing dust motes, tiny particles of shed skin, dried sputum, and straw dust, each one a potential vessel for disease, shimmering beautifully in the light. The sounds of the morning, the coughing, the moaning, the prayers, have settled into a steady, hypnotic rhythm, the ambient music of the house of God. It is a place outside of time, where every day is a perfect copy of the one before, a relentless cycle of suffering and ritual. But the rhythm is broken by a sudden commotion at the entrance. Two men carry a rough wooden litter, and on it lies a man, his leg bent at an unnatural angle, a shard of white bone piercing the bloody fabric of his trousers. He is a stonemason, fallen from the cathedral scaffolding. He is conscious, and his groans are sharp and raw, a sound of fresh, vibrant agony that cuts through the dull, chronic misery of the hall. He is carried past the beds of the dying and deposited onto an empty cot near the back, a space that has only recently been vacated. The physician, having completed his intellectual exercises for the day, has already departed. This messy, practical business is not for him. This is a job for the barber surgeon. The surgeon, wiping his bloody lancet on his leather apron, approaches the new arrival. He examines the leg with a professional detachment, like a carpenter examining a broken chair. He prods the wound, ignoring the mason's scream. He confers quietly with a pair of burly monks. The verdict is swift and unspoken. The leg cannot be saved. It must come off. There is no operating theater, no sterile room. The surgery will happen right here, in the open hall, for all to see and hear. The mason's cot is dragged into a space with better light. A nun brings him a leather flask of rough, potent wine and tells him to drink all of it, quickly. It is the only anesthetic he will receive. The two burly monks position themselves, one at the man's shoulders, the other holding down his good leg. Their job is simple: to be human clamps, to prevent the patient from struggling himself to death. The barber surgeon lays out his tools on a small wooden stool. They look less like medical instruments and more like the contents of a butcher's bag. There is a long, sharp knife for the flesh, a small, curved saw for the bone, and several branding irons heating in a portable brazier, their tips glowing a dull, menacing red. He takes a thick leather strap and instructs the mason to bite down on it, hard. Then he nods to the monks. They apply their weight. The mason's eyes are wide with a terror that is far beyond the pain. The surgeon takes the knife. He does not hesitate. With a single, long, deep cut, he slices through the muscle and sinew of the thigh, just above the break. The mason's body arches, and a muffled, inhuman scream forces its way past the leather strap in his teeth. The monks lean harder, their knuckles white. The smell of fresh blood, coppery and sharp, fills the air, a scent so powerful it momentarily overwhelms the hall's usual stench. The surgeon works quickly, his face a mask of intense concentration. Now he takes the saw. He places its teeth against the exposed, white bone of the femur, and he begins to cut. The sound is the most terrible of all. It is a wet, grating, crunching sound, a noise that speaks of a fundamental violation of the body. It is the sound of a man being systematically dismantled while still alive. The saw moves back and forth, its rhythm, a brutal counterpoint to the frantic, panicked drumming of the mason's heart. The monks grunt with the effort of holding him down. Finally, With a last, sharp crack, the bone is severed. The ruined lower leg is tossed unceremoniously into a wooden bucket. But the ordeal is not over. The surgeon takes one of the glowing irons from the brazier. The raw, weeping stump of the thigh must be sealed to stop the bleeding. He presses the fiery metal against the open wound. There is a loud, sickening sizzle, and the air fills with the greasy, acrid smoke of burning flesh and blood. The mason, who had been struggling weakly, goes limp, his consciousness finally surrendering to a pain too vast to be endured. The surgeon inspects his handiwork, a blackened, cauterized stump. He wraps it in bandages that have been soaked in wine, the closest thing he has to an antiseptic. The mason, pale as a ghost, is carried back to a bed, where he will either die of shock and infection, which is the most likely outcome, or survive as a one-legged beggar. The surgeon cleans his tools, and the monks mop up the blood from the floor with handfuls of straw. Within minutes, the drama is over. The slow, rhythmic misery of the hall resumes its reign, only now it is punctuated by the faint, smoky smell of cooked meat. The nuns, who observe the entire procedure with calm detachment, now go about their afternoon duties. They change the straw in the mattresses of the incontinent, a task they perform with a practiced efficiency that borders on grace. They move through the rows, their rosary beads clicking softly, their lips moving in silent prayer. They are the constants in this theater of pain, their presence, a quiet, unwavering testament to a faith that can somehow accommodate and make sense of this level of suffering. They believe they are doing God's work, not by curing the body, but by shepherding the soul through its final, earthly trial. As the afternoon light begins to fade, a priest arrives to make his rounds. He is an old man with watery eyes and a soft, gentle voice. He moves from bed to bed, offering a blessing, a word of comfort, the touch of a cool hand on a feverish brow. For those who are close to the end, he performs the last rites, anointing their foreheads with holy oil and murmuring the ancient Latin prayers that promise forgiveness and safe passage into the next world. His presence changes the atmosphere in the hall, softening the edges of the despair, offering a narrative of redemption for what otherwise seems like a meaningless end. Evening descends, and the hall is plunged into a deep gloom, broken only by a few flickering tallow candles that cast long, dancing shadows on the stone walls. The great room seems to shrink, becoming more intimate, more confessional. The sounds change too. The coughing seems to soften. The groans become more subdued. The dominant sound is now the low, ragged breathing of dozens of failing bodies, a collective, labored sigh. This is the time of day when the will to live often gives way, when the fight is abandoned, and the body finally accepts its defeat. You can hear it now, from a bed in the corner, the death rattle. It is an unmistakable sound, a wet, gurgling noise that comes from deep within the chest as the lungs begin to fill with fluid. It is the sound of a person drowning on the inside. The other patients in the bed with the dying man shift away from him, creating a small, invisible circle of respect and fear around him. A nun stands by his side, holding a candle, her face illuminated in the flickering light, her expression calm and patient. She is a silent witness, a final companion on a journey everyone must take alone. The rattling stops. In the sudden, profound silence, the nun leans forward and closes the man's eyes. She makes the sign of the cross over his chest, whispers a final requiescat in pace, and then pulls the rough wool blanket over his head. There is no ceremony, no pause. Death is the most common event in this place, and it is treated with a simple administrative finality. The man's brief, miserable story is over. His bedfellows, relieved, shift back into the space his warm body once occupied. Night falls completely. The great hall is now a landscape of sleeping, dying, and dead bodies, all jumbled together in the oppressive dark. Most of the candles have been extinguished to save wax. The only light comes from a single lantern, burning near the entrance. The sounds are now those of a troubled sleep, a man crying out in a delirium, a woman weeping softly, the relentless rhythmic grinding of teeth. It is a place of profound collective loneliness, a room full of people dying in their own private darkness. Later, in the deepest part of the night, you hear the heavy groan of the main doors opening. Two figures enter, silhouetted against the moonlight. They are the body collectors. They move through the hall with a quiet purpose, their eyes accustomed to the dark. The nun points them toward the bed with the shrouded corpse. Without a word, they lift the body, which is already stiffening, and carry it out to a small, two-wheeled cart waiting in the street. The cart is already half full. They will take their cargo to a communal pit outside the city walls. The man's space in the bed is now truly empty, ready for the next piece of broken humanity that the city produces. You follow them out, leaving the Hotel Dieu behind. The night air of the city, which just this morning seemed so foul and thick, now feels shockingly clean and fresh by comparison. You take a deep breath, and it feels like a resurrection. The hospital is a machine, a factory that takes in the sick and the broken and produces the dead with an appalling efficiency. It is a monument to the absolute failure of knowledge, a place where good intentions and profound ignorance conspire to create a perfect hell. But not everyone places their faith in the high theories of the physician or the grim piety of the hospital nuns. For most common ailments, you would seek out a different kind of healer. You would go to the wise woman on the edge of town, the one whose garden is a chaotic library of herbs, and whose knowledge comes not from ancient books, but from a chain of whispers passed down from her mother and her mother's mother. Her remedies are a mix of practical botany and deep-rooted superstition. She will give you willow bark tea for a fever, a poultice of comfrey for a broken bone, and a charm of raven's feathers to ward off evil spirits. Her cures are often gentler, and sometimes, astonishingly, they even work. And for the most intimate and dangerous of all human labors, the act of birth, you would never dream of going to the hospital. You would summon the midwife. She is a figure of immense power and deep suspicion in the community. Her hands, chapped and calloused from a lifetime of work, have brought hundreds of children into this world. She knows the secrets of the female body in a way no male physician ever could. She knows how to turn a breech baby, how to use herbs to speed a difficult labor, and when to simply sit and wait with a soothing hand and a calm voice. She operates in a world of women, a secret, sacred space where the messy, bloody, miraculous business of life begins. Her knowledge is real, practical, and utterly essential. She is the opposite of the physician. She touches, she comforts, and she is judged not on her theories, but on the number of living babies and mothers she leaves behind her. But whether you die under the care of a physician, a nun, or a midwife, your journey ends in the same place, the churchyard. Let us stand for a moment by the low stone wall of the parish cemetery. It is a small, crowded plot of land, and it is overflowing. The ground is not so much earth as it is a dense compost of forgotten ancestors. The ground is raised several feet above the street, a testament to the sheer volume of bodies crammed into this small, consecrated space over generations. You watch as the body of Thomas, the fallen stonemason, is carried through the lich gate. There is no coffin, only a simple linen shroud that does little to hide the shape of the broken man within. His widow follows, her face a mask of performative grief, her wails loud enough to satisfy the neighbors that she is playing her part correctly. The priest, his face bored from a lifetime of these rituals, chants in a Latin that no one here understands, but whose solemn ancient sounds are a comfort in themselves. They lay the body in the shallow trench feet to the east, so that on Judgment Day he will rise, facing Jerusalem. The grave diggers, reeking of sweat and cheap ale, begin to shovel the heavy, corpse-rich earth back into the hole, the thuds of dirt on the shroud, a final, percussive end to a life of noise and labor. The funeral, however, is not the end of the social obligation. It is merely the prelude to the wake. You follow the small procession of mourners to the same tavern where Thomas spent his wages. The air inside is thick with the smell of spilled beer and the damp wool of the mourners' clothes. A long table has been laid with bread, cheese, and pitchers of ale, a debt his widow will be paying for a year. This is the delicate, morbid calculus of grief. You must spend enough to honor the dead and satisfy the living, but not so much that you starve yourself. The first few toasts are somber, full of praise for the deceased. But as the ale flows, the mood shifts. The talk turns from Thomas's virtues to his debts, from his skill with a chisel to his fondness for the barmaid. The living have needs the dead can no longer complain about, and a good wake is as much about reaffirming the bonds of the community as it is about mourning the loss of one of its members. You must eat, you must drink, you must speak his name, lest his ghost feel forgotten and decide to linger. But the city's ledger must be balanced. For every entry of death, there must be one of life, or at least the potential for it. Let us leave the somber tavern and step into the bright, chaotic energy of a wedding day. You see the bride, a girl of 16 named Isabel, being led in a procession through the streets. She is not a person today. She is a prize, a piece of property, a walking, breathing treaty between two families. Her face is powdered with wheat flour to make her look pale and aristocratic, and her hair is unbound, a symbol of her virginity that will be publicly disproven before the night is through. The ceremony itself does not happen at the altar, but at the church door, in the full view of the public. It is a business transaction witnessed by God. The priest presides as the dowry is confirmed, the contracts are affirmed, and Isabel's father places her hand into the hand of her new husband, a portly merchant twice her age, who looks at her with the pleased expression of a man who has just acquired a fine new horse. The solemnity of the church door gives way to the planned chaos of the wedding feast. It is a sensory assault of roast pig with an apple in its mouth, the pungent smell of garlic and herbs, and the sweet, cloying scent of honeyed cakes. Musicians in a corner play a frantic, screeching tune on a rebec and a pipe, a sound designed less for dancing and more for drowning out conversation. You watch as guests, their fingers greasy, tear at the food and swill watered-down wine from wooden cups. Bawdy jokes are shouted across the tables, each one a crude commentary on the night to come. And then, as the evening deepens, comes the most public part of this private union, the bedding ceremony. The bride and groom are escorted by a crowd of jeering, laughing guests to their chamber, put to bed, and given a final cup of spiced wine before the door is closed. The community has seen the contract signed and the feast provided. Now they must be assured of the consummation, the final seal on the deal. Life, however, is not all funerals and weddings. The true social fabric is woven in the daily, mundane interactions of the market square. Here, justice and entertainment are one and the same. You see a baker, his head and hands locked in the wooden stocks, his face a canvas of filth. A sign above his head proclaims his crime, selling bread made with more chalk than flour. Children and apprentices take great delight in pelting him with rotten fruit and lumps of mud, their laughter sharp and cruel. This is not just punishment. It is a public service announcement. Nearby, a ballad monger, a man with a booming voice and a stack of cheap, crudely printed woodcuts, sings the news of the day. It is a song about a local lord's scandalous affair, full of exaggerated details and invented rhymes. People gather around, paying a farthing for a printed sheet. This is the city's newspaper, its gossip column, and its court of public opinion, all rolled into one noisy, unreliable, and utterly captivating performance. This vibrant social life unfolds against a backdrop of breathtaking filth. The very concept of private hygiene is a luxury few can imagine, and even fewer can afford. At any moment, a window high above you might be flung open, followed by a cry of "Gardez l'eau," "Watch out for the water," and a cascade of the previous night's waste from a chamber pot will splatter onto the street below. It is a daily, accepted hazard of urban living. The city's river, which provides water for drinking and washing, is also the repository for the tanner's chemical runoff, the butcher's blood and entrails, and the raw sewage from every home with a garderobe chute. To cleanse your body, you might visit a public bathhouse, a steamy, noisy establishment where you share the murky, lukewarm water with a dozen of your neighbors. These places are as much for socializing and conducting illicit business as they are for washing. A steamy microcosm of the city where you could get clean, catch a skin disease, and negotiate a contract, all in the same afternoon. The rhythm of your year is dictated not by a calendar on the wall, but by the church's liturgical clock. Life is a succession of fasts and feasts, each with its own rules and rituals. You watch the procession for the Feast of Corpus Christi, a grand piece of religious theater. The city's guilds march in full regalia, each trying to outdo the others with their colorful banners and displays of wealth. They are followed by priests in their finest vestments, swinging censers that fill the air with the thick, sweet smell of incense. a holy perfume that does little to mask the underlying stench of the crowd. Rough wooden stages have been set up in the square, and on them, amateur actors perform the mystery plays, dramatic retellings of Bible stories. The acting is crude, the costumes are ridiculous. The man playing God wears a gilded mask and bellows his lines, but the crowd is captivated. It is a day of piety that will inevitably end in widespread, sanctioned drunkenness, the sacred and the profane locked in their eternal, messy embrace. Beneath the grand, official narrative of the church, however, runs a deeper, older, and far more intimate current of belief. This is the world of superstition, an unwritten rulebook for navigating a world that is capricious and full of unseen dangers. You learn from your mother that you must never pass the salt shaker from hand to hand, for that is how the devil passes his influence. You learn to greet a single magpie with a polite nod and a "Good morning, Mr. Magpie," to ward off the bad luck it brings. A horseshoe nailed over your door is not for good fortune. It is a cold iron barrier that no fairy or evil spirit can cross. You leave a bowl of cream on your doorstep at night, not for a stray cat, but for the hobgoblin that lives in your attic, to keep him from souring the milk or tangling your weaving. These are not quaint folk tales. They are essential, practical measures, a form of spiritual insurance against a world that is fundamentally, terrifyingly enchanted. The most powerful taboos are those concerning the human body itself, that strange and unreliable vessel for the soul. A woman during her monthly courses is considered unclean, her very presence capable of spoiling a batch of beer, rusting a knife, or causing bread to fall. A child born left-handed is immediately suspect, their sinister dexterity seen as a mark of the devil's favor, and they are often beaten until they learn to use their correct hand. A birthmark, particularly a dark or hairy one, is not a simple quirk of pigmentation. It could be a witch's mark, the spot where a demon has suckled, a physical sign of a secret, damned allegiance. Your body is a text that your neighbors are constantly reading, searching for any deviation from the norm, any sign that you are not what you seem. To be different is to be dangerous, and to be dangerous is to be a target. And this is why the silence in that back room of the brothel is so profound, so heavy with a fear that is more than just the fear of discovery. It is the sound of every single one of these social rules being broken at once. Every major event in this world, from a birth to a burial, is a public performance, witnessed, judged, and recorded by the community and the church. A life that begins in secret is a life that does not officially exist. It is a violation of the natural order, an unsanctioned, unrecorded soul entering the world through a back door. The child is not just illegitimate. It is a walking, breathing taboo. The mother is not just a sinner. She is a conspirator against the entire social and spiritual structure of her world. In a city that lives and breathes on public ritual and shared belief, the most dangerous act of all is to create a life that nobody is allowed to see. And yet, that world, so absolute and unchanging, carried within its own noise the seeds of its undoing. The cycle of labor and suffering, of faith and filth, was not eternal. Listen closely past the final thud of dirt on the shroud, and you can hear a new sound beginning to emerge. It is not a loud sound. It is the quiet, methodical scratching of a pen on parchment, as a city clerk, for the first time, drafts a law forbidding the dumping of entrails in the street. It is the murmur of merchants in a guild hall, arguing that a bridge that collapses every winter is bad for business and perhaps ought to be built by a man who understands stone, not just a man who is the mayor's cousin. These were not revolutions born of high-minded ideals, but of a slow, dawning, and deeply practical exhaustion. It was the simple, grudging realization that a city where the water is poison and the air is a miasma might not be the most efficient place to live and trade. This quiet, pragmatic rebellion echoes through the centuries and lands directly in your own life. If you can walk down a city street today without keeping one wary eye on the windows above, you can thank the tired officials who finally legislated the chamber pot into the privacy of the home. If you enjoy a weekend, a concept so profoundly alien to the medieval mind it would have sounded like a dangerous theological heresy, you are living the legacy of the first desperate workers who dared to suggest that laboring from sunup to cool Sundown until your body simply fell apart was, perhaps, not the most sustainable model for a workforce. The ghosts of the miners who choked on dust and the spinners who were deafened by their looms are the silent, uncredited architects of the 40-hour workweek, of the very idea that a life should consist of something more than just work and sleep. The change was written, too, in the language of food. The baker shamed in the stocks was the beginning of a long, slow argument between commerce and survival. The guilds, in their own self-interest, began to impose standards to create marks of quality, to understand that a reputation for honesty was a currency more valuable than the pennies saved by mixing sawdust into flour. That violent public shaming was the ancestor of every food safety inspection, every list of ingredients printed on a label, every seal of approval that you now take for granted. If you can bite into a loaf of bread today with the simple, unthinking confidence that it is just bread, you owe a small, silent debt to the generations of angry customers and shamed merchants who fought the slow, brutal war against the poison in their daily meal. And in the great, echoing halls of the Hôtel Dieu, the most profound revolution of all was stirring. It began when a new kind of physician, a man of dangerous curiosity, decided that the ancient texts might be wrong. It began when he chose to believe the evidence of his own eyes over the elegant theories of the four humors. This revolution did not look like a battle. It looked like a man standing over a dissected corpse, carefully drawing the true map of the human body, an act of sacrilege that would redefine the very nature of life and death. The physician with his urine flask and the barber surgeon with his bloody saw would slowly, painstakingly, be replaced by the scientist and the surgeon, by the quiet, radical ideas of hygiene, of germs, of a world where sickness could be understood, fought, and perhaps even defeated. Every clean hospital room, every sterile instrument, every life-saving surgery is a monument to that first, terrifying departure from a tradition that was as beautiful as it was deadly. Even that secret, desperate birth in the back room of a brothel finds its echo in your modern world. The child, whose very existence was a crime against the social and religious order, represents every life that was once deemed unofficial, uncounted, and unimportant. The slow, methodical creation of parish records, of the census, of the birth certificate, was a quiet insistence that every soul matters, that every life, no matter where or how it begins, deserves to be recorded. That fragile, taboo life is the spiritual ancestor of the idea of the individual, of the citizen, of the fundamental right to simply exist. Your own name, written in a government ledger, is a testament to a world that decided, after centuries of brutal indifference, that no one should be allowed to simply disappear. And so the noise of that world finally begins to fade. The clang of the blacksmith's hammer, the roar of the forge, the wet cough in the hospital hall, the grating sound of the bone saw, the secret stifled cry of a newborn. They all recede, becoming faint, like a story you were told a long time ago. The world they built with their sweat and their blood, with their prayers and their poisons, has been paved over, built upon, and forgotten. Yet it is still here. It is the foundation beneath your feet. The struggles that defined every moment of their lives are the settled questions that grant you the luxury of peace. The dangers they faced have become the rights you now hold as self-evident. The silence that surrounds you now, as you prepare to rest, is not an empty silence. It is a quiet that has been earned by a billion noisy, difficult, and painful lives. Let the echo of their world be a gentle reminder of the deep, soft peace of your own. Let their noise be your lullaby, and now you can simply let go.